for Senate Bill 16, and the chair will call Roger Reeves, Ethan Smith, Lauren Shook, and Salazar. How are you? Welcome.
Welcome, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Brian Creighton. My name is Dr. Roger Reeves. I'm testifying today as a private citizen, but I am also a professor at the University of Texas at Austin and have taught at public universities up and down this vast land of America for the last 18 years. I'm here to oppose Senate Bill 16 because of its vague language and desire to restrict what can and cannot be taught to college students here in Texas. What I find most dangerous and particularly fascistic is the vague language concerning the compelling of students to adopt a belief that any race, sex, ethnicity, or social, political, or religious belief is inherently superior to any other race, sex, ethnicity, or belief. As a professor that teaches literature, history, and criticism about Black people in America, which is literature and history this sort of bill seeks to ban, I can assure you that compelling students is not what I or other teachers do. What we do is present evidence, for instance, about laws, not ideas or theories, capital LAWS laws. Laws that forbade the teaching of enslaved Black people to read, and the penalty for which teaching Black people to read was a fine or imprisonment. We teach that if one circulated what the state of South Carolina called incendiary literature in 1739, which was literature that called for the abolition of slavery, that penalty for circulating that literature was death. I teach the history of how enslaved Black people eked out lives amid the harrowing conditions of slavery, made art and poetry that addressed their positions as unfree people, made art and poetry that celebrated life that could not be overwhelmed by their bondage. When I look at Senate Bill 16, I think of these slave codes and laws that restricted the teaching of Black folks to read, to write, to find their freedom on their own terms. This is why I urge you today not to travel this well-worn and dangerous road. We do not need laws that restrict what can be taught, what history is deemed acceptable. We need to strike down these walls of Jericho. I urge you to let this bill die here on the floor that is already full of blood.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm actually testifying in favor of this bill. I didn't even realize this was about critical race theory. I just read the text of the bill. That an institution of higher education must be committed to creating an environment of intellectual...
Sir, if you could
Yes.
mention your name.
Ethan Smith, private citizen.
And you're testifying for the measure.
I'm for the measure.
Yeah.
The idea that intellectual diversity, so diversity has never been found that we have a state's compelling interest in diversity just for diversity's sake. It's been in specific instances. So like the military, for instance, we want a diverse military because it's for our national security to have people that speak Arabic, people that speak Chinese, etc. All different kinds of people in our military, we want them. In higher education, the purpose of diversity, the phrase is to obtain the benefits of diversity in a higher education setting. What is the benefits of diversity? And it really comes down to the First Amendment. It's really people interacting with each other. So maybe we need more places where conservative people feel comfortable at a school like University of Texas, but it's not enough just to have those people there. We need the people to interact with each other and to bounce the ideas off each other. I do have a kind of qualms with this thing about compelling people. I am a teacher. I'm a piano teacher, and I compel my students. If I'm not compelling my students to do something, I'm not doing my job, because I see them an hour a week, and I want to compel them when I'm not there to practice, and they'll do that the rest of the week. That's really what's going to determine if they have success or not. I'm trying to compel them, and they're children, younger children. So it's not, I don't think it's as cut as dry as sending an email and saying, get 5 bonus points on your grade if you volunteer on this person's congressional campaign and it's for a specific political party. I think that compelling is in that vague place. So I don't know that compel is really the word you want there. So I agree with the people that raise that issue.
Okay. My name is Lauren Shook. I'm a PhD student in education, leadership, and policy at the University of Texas. Prior to that, I worked in rural upward bound programs, which are college access programs, and I care deeply about higher education in the state. I am opposing Senate Bill 16 due to what I believe is the actual intent of the bill, as well as the policy consequences of the bill. So the text of the bill sounds very inclusive. It paints a picture of freedom of thought, respect for diversity. But Dan Patrick's website, and as we've discussed here, notes that this is an anti-CRT bill, an anti-critical race bill, and it's using some of the same language we saw last session. So for anyone in the room who is not aware, the anti-CRT movement originated by a New York conservative operative named Christopher Rufo. It's part of a national conservative agenda. Rufo and others like him have explicitly admitted that this movement is not about critical race theory. Critical race theory is a socio-legal theory which few people ever actually are exposed to unless they study aspects of policy or law. In fact, when I took a course on CRT at Stanford's law school during my master's program, it was taught by a professor who had to be flown across the country because no faculty member at Stanford taught CRT. What anti-CRT bills are actually about is creating a chilling effect on discussions of inequity. These bills create an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty for instructors so that they do not discuss how systems and policies create the social and political realities that we live in. And Dan Patrick has said in his inaugural address that banning CRT will also keep out faculty members who say things he doesn't like. I want to make it clear that critical race theory does not ask students to believe that any race, gender, or belief is inherently better or worse than another. I know that as a student of policy, and I really believe the originators of the anti-CRT movement know that too. The anti-CRT and anti-DEI bills that we are seeing are disingenuous, they're misleading, they're intentionally creating a moral panic. Additionally, implying that faculty are compelling or forcing students to adopt a set of beliefs shows a deeply flawed understanding of how theory is used in an academic context.
Members, are there any questions of the panel?
Thank you.
Okay, the chair calls Manip Aslam, Gary Bledsoe, Anaya Ponce, Angela Valenzuela, Dr. Angela Valenzuela. And the first one, sorry, my microphone is not on, Manip Aslam. Okay, and we'll call a couple more, and if all the seats are full, if you could just fill in right behind. Maria Unda and Becky Villarreal.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. I represent Black-Brown Dialogues on Policy, and we're a group that's come together to address...
I'm sorry, do you mind stating your name and position?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Angela Valenzuela, professor at UT.
Thank you.
And I teach critical race theory. I have a lot of understanding of it, and I teach a lot of other things too. But what I'm doing is representing the position of Black-Brown Dialogues on Policy, and expressing that this Senate Bill 16 is a piece of legislation that, as written, seems a bit innocuous, and I say that because it doesn't really reflect what we do in education. It's little more, in our opinion, a Trojan horse. If this bill gets through, everything else will follow suit. I think that what we need to do is have a deeper understanding, I was suggesting in the previous testimony, of CRT. This is part of a family of anti-DEI bills. The purpose of this, if you can consider the other bills, are to institute a sense of abstract equality that is not verifiably empirical. It's not real. It's not sustainable as a theory of action in legislation or in life. We are not abstract equals. by having processes that are colorblind and sex neutral. If we drill down further and consider the policing of speech to carry out the impoverished dystopian world that this bill seeks, it's one where race and sex have little use beyond narrow demographic usages, and this denies our rights as non-dominant, diverse people to even exist. So, not unlike autocrats that establish punitive systems of surveillance, this bill engineers an institutional posture embedded within legislation that is an affront to the cherished deals of free speech and academic freedom. It would require a sniffing out of DEI violators that smacks of McCarthyism.
Thank you, ma'am. If you could wrap up quickly here. We've got a lot of witnesses, I think, today. Now,
Okay, thank you.
could you state your name and position on the bill and who you represent?
Hi, my name is Maria del Carmen Unda. I am against this bill. I am a doctoral student at the University of Texas, Austin in education policy and planning. I also am a Gates Millennium Scholar. My research focuses on equity and policy analysis as it pertains to K through 12 students in the Texas public school system. So I am here on behalf of TLEC, which is a Texas Legislative Education Equity Coalition, and it is a collaborative of over 30 organizations. And we oppose Senate Bill 16 because it restricts intellectual freedom in higher education institutions across Texas. It is too vague. As a policy implementation scholar, it's the phrase may compel or attempt to compel is defined and very unclear. I am also here representing a number of student coalitions from the University of Texas at Austin that vary from, Latinx, Africa diaspora, and Asian American student collectives. And we have been discussing extensively that if these DEI initiatives, anti-DEI bills pass, that we will not pay tuition. And that is a growing movement within the University of Texas systems.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you all for coming today. Okay, we have a few more here. The chair calls Curran Floyd, Amanda Garcia, and Paul Hale. And Corinne, if we could start with you, and if you could state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Curran Floyd. I'm a student at UT Austin. I'm also the president-elect of the Senate of College Councils. I'm here in opposition of SB 16. So today I wanted to talk specifically about the program that I represent as an honors student researcher in human development. The passage of this bill would immediately cause issues for research in my program. The nature of research isn't to compel, but it is certainly to argue based on the population studied. We have some of the foremost researchers in human development here at our university, including Dr. Stephen Russell. A significant amount, actually the entirety of his work, focuses on queer adolescence and queer human development, apologies. When it comes to compulsion, this is language that's intentionally vague and can be leveraged against our research, which would immediately degrade the quality of these programs. Human development specifically offers 5 different tracks, and each of these, we've been looking to diversify the population studied because that's what affects the quality of our research. Whenever we have diverse populations that we recruit from and actually study, that lends even more gravity to our research and effectively makes us have even greater authority on the things that we're studying. I wanted to also talk about the quality of education at UT Austin, because that is the university I represent. We have one of the only universities in the South with some of the ethnic studies programs that would immediately be impacted by the passage of this bill. When we are told that we can't discuss things like gender, race, sexuality, we're already one of the only R1 research institutions without a department for women's and gender studies. If this bill were to pass, we would continue to lose programs of that nature, which put us on par with things like the Ivy Leagues and Rice University.
Thank you. Paul, if you could state your name, position on
My
the bill,
name is
and who you
Paul
represent.
Hale. I'm from Queen City, Texas, and I'm representing myself. I don't have any of those fancy credentials. I'm just one of the guys that paid for all of it. I was a taxpayer and a business owner for a little over 33 years. My wife and I saved for 18 years and made a college fund for my son. And when it was there available, my son at 18 years old seen all this stuff for what it's worth. He said, I don't want to go to any of those colleges that have these policies of hatred. I said, well, I'm not sure it's policy. He said, well, look at it. And so we continued to try to talk him into it. I said, well, there's going to be diversity and that adversity, but he refused it. He's seen it for exactly what it was, and I did too. And so that remains a question. Why would somebody save 18 years to send their kid to a university where the administrations cannot tell the difference between a male and a female and hate everybody that even pretends to, and hates people for the color of their skin? And we are seeing our universities being turned into hate centers and cults. And if students don't think exactly a certain way, they're ridiculed and persecuted. We're seeing it all over the state of Texas. I never thought I would see it when I started saving that money years ago, but I don't have much. I guess I'm done early. I want to thank the committee for letting me testify.
Members, are there any questions for the panel?
Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all for coming today. I'll call Amanda Garcia again. Amanda Garcia. Okay. Doesn't seem like she's here. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on, for, or against the committee substitute for Senate Bill 16 today?
Sorry, I was a little bit late. You already called my name. Can I still testify?
Could you
Your name, please.
state your name?
Aslam. Yes, I am. Aslam.
Okay. And who you represent and your position on the
Myself.
bill. Thank you.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Manip Aslam. I'm a student at the LBJ School of Public Affairs. Policy wonk a little bit here myself, testifying against Senate Bill 18. Senate Bill 16. My bad. The vague language is on this bill is intentional, in my opinion. It is. There is no root. It is not rooted in policy or any priority, for that fact. It says that institutions of higher academic education may not compel a student to be held to a certain belief, and that just does not happen in our current institutions currently. And I believe that this is a high priority bill because it's a high priority number, Senate Bill 16. We could be talking about how Texas has the second highest GDP, yet we are in the bottom half in the states in child well-being and education and in learning outcomes and so on and so forth. So this should not be a legislative priority. This is laughable. This is not sound policy.
You still have a minute if you want, if you got away. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Members, are there any questions? Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to testify on, for, or against the committee substitute for Senate Bill 16? Okay. Seeing none, public testimony is closed on the committee substitute for Senate Bill 16. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 16 will be left pending, and I thank the author, Senator Hughes.